Well, welcome everybody to our Wednesday night AJ Zoom. We'd like to first and foremost wish you a Chag Pesach Sameach. It will be Pesach on Saturday evening. And as we say with our hostages still in Gaza, while we had our exodus from Egypt, we hope that this Pesach brings freedom for our hostages currently in Gaza. Our hearts are with them right now. Thank you so much for joining us online. We have a huge number who are online live with us right now. We have those watching on Facebook Live, welcome to you as well, and those listening on J-Air tomorrow or the recording. We have a very special guest coming tonight. I know we are having a couple of technical difficulties. I don't want to say too much, but first I'll introduce our president, Dr. David Adler, who will be interviewing our two wonderful guests tonight, and I'll go to him to say more. Dr. David Adler.
Okay, thank you very much, Tennille. And as we always do with the election-related events, there's a standard disclaimer that HAA does not formally endorse any political party or any candidates. We're willing to have discussions and improve understandings right across the political spectrum, with one exception. We don't deal with the Greens. So we're very pleased that representatives from One Nation will be with us this evening. Jennifer Game, who I understand is the lead Senate candidate for South Australia, is already here, and Pauline Hanson is having some technical difficulties connecting with us, but hopefully in the next few minutes that will be resolved. So, Jennifer, before Pauline joins us, can you make a comment about the situation in South Australia? How are you travelling? What are the polls showing? How's the image of One Nation in South Australia?
So we don't personally poll, or the party doesn't poll, but News Poll comes out every few months and does a state-by-state breakdown. And the last breakdown said that we had 11% of the primary vote here in South Australia. So that's very pleasing, and it has moved around over the time that we've had an elected member. It's been as low as, I think, 7 or 8, and it's been as high as 12. What's been really interesting is that for most of that time, we've been out polling the Greens, and there hasn't actually been any comment anywhere about that. So I think we're doing okay here, considering that there are very few Jewish people in South Australia, possibly less than 1,000. And so the support comes broadly to us.
Yeah. So with an 11% primary, you would personally have a very strong chance of being elected to the Senate on May 3rd. Is that overstating it, or is that a fair assessment?
I think the operative word is if. If it was 11%, yes, that would be true. I'm not sure that 11% is right. I think it'll be much lower than that. But certainly it'll be, I'll be in contention anyway, I would think, for the last seat. A lot will depend on luck, really, about how the preferences flow.
Yeah. And what are your priorities? What are the major messages that you're wishing to put forward in the campaign in the next few weeks?
So we're very focused as a party on trying to deal with the cost of living. Our policies are largely about making government much smaller than it is now, paying down some debt, and returning money to individuals, because we think that they can spend the money better than the government, especially in South Australia. Yeah, especially.
Yeah. Now, although you don't put it front and centre of your campaign, it's widely known that you are part of the Jewish community, and there is a particular story that I would like you to tell, because it's not as widely known in the broader Australian Jewish community as it should be, and that is which politician was the first in the country federally to move for the adoption of the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, definition of anti-Semitism, and how did that come about?
So Senator Hanson then put that forward in, I think, about March of 2017. She stood up and said that that's what she was about to do, and she asked for a seconder, and there was no one. She was stopped from putting it forward, so it didn't go any further than that. So even though the Liberal Party in 2019 did adopt it, and we have become a member, at that time they weren't prepared to support One Nation doing that.
So let me make it perfectly clear, because you and I spoke at the time, and indeed you drafted the resolution, I think, that Pauline Hanson used, or was trying to use, rather.
Yes, because actually I met her at the Great Synagogue in Sydney at an interfaith meeting, and I was just asked whether I would sit next to her and make sure that she was all right. That's how I met her, and she'd never been in a synagogue at all before then. And that led to, I met her again later, but that led to her offering me a short-term position just to see how it would work out. And she said to me, why don't we give it a go for 3 months? I want someone with a tax background, and off we went. And I'm, until recently, when I resigned to stand as, to nominate as Senate candidate, I was still working with her and for her, and she did it. Just because she thought it was the right thing to do. And she supported the Jewish community and Israel consistently. No pressure from me at all, because actually she's not subject to being pressured for a start, but because she thought it was the right thing to do, and has been consistent in her support and her position about that. And that's been very, very nice. I mean, everybody in the office knows, my background. And certainly when my daughter was elected in 2022 to the upper house in South Australia, she acknowledged her Jewish heritage in that speech and said how proud she was of that. So everyone in the party knows, and I've never, ever from within the party received any kind of negative comment about it. If anything, a very, very positive position, which perhaps surprises some people, because I know when Senator Hanson was first elected, another major body that says that they represent the Jewish community in Sydney, they came out and said what a shocking thing it was that, a racist like Senator Hanson could be elected, and that she would disturb the harmony that exists between the Islamic, groups here in Australia and the Jewish community, and this was all going to be a bad thing. And of course, now we see that it wasn't Senator Hanson that has disrupted the harmony, that there have been other, forces at play.
Yeah. And what is really peculiar is that occasionally, or particularly in those years, you used to hear accusations that Senator Hanson or One Nation was anti-Semitic. And it seems to me to be the complete opposite of the track record. How do you get your head around that? how do you react to those accusations, Jennifer?
I think, of course, it's based, a lot of things are said about One Nation in the hope that people won't vote for the party because the other parties, all the other parties, are concerned about the increasing support for the party, mostly based on its fairly sort of centre of the road policies. I think probably a defining moment was when she wore the burqa into the parliament. I was there. I was sitting in the back in the advisors area of the Senate. I knew what she was going to do, and wasn't sure how it was all going to turn out. But the heart, what she was talking about and what she was worried about was political Islam in Australia. And at the heart of political Islam is anti-Semitism.
Hmm.
And it was shocking to see an enormous amount of support for Islam, then by Senator Brandis and later as well, even though Islam, political Islam has no place for democracy. It's got no place for people to be represented in a parliament to make laws because the laws are already made according to the Quran. And so there's none of that's needed. So this double standard or mixed magical thinking, I don't know what it is, but it started to become very clear then, and it was very shocking to me. Very shocking, the level of support for political Islam in the parliament.
Well, seeing you've raised that subject of political Islam, let me ask you your views, Jennifer, on we're starting just to see it get organised in Australia. The sort of Muslim Vote Matters movement, a bit of a copy of what's happened in the UK. Most of the commentators are saying it's not going to have a significant impact at this election on May 3. But is it something we should be worried about in the medium term?
So, well, if you look at some of the material that they've put out, they're interested in.
There's someone called Pauline who's just entered.
Oh, that's exciting.
That's exciting.
Absolutely.
Let me see if it's the right Pauline. I mean, we do have a few Paulines. I'll make co-host, and if that's Pauline Hanson, can you unmute? I think we've got a.
Right. Okay. So that should be right, David.
You're with us.
My God, that's been an effort.
Pauline. Well, firstly, relax. Jennifer was holding the fort a bit, so we've interrupted the sequence now that you're with us.
I do apologise, David. I'm so sorry. Technology and me don't get on. I'd rather run the country than deal with technology.
I was just about to say it's just as well you're better at other things rather than the technology. And if I was to be a little bit rude, I might. No, I won't. I won't say it's age related because all of us.
It is, David. I admit. Okay, it's age related. I'll say it.
Okay. Well, we were talking about the South Australian situation, and we were talking about some of the criticisms that One Nation had suffered. So I'm going to switch to our very, very special guest, Senator Pauline Hanson, who I've had the privilege, the pleasure of knowing for some years. And one of the things that I asked Jennifer about is that you were actually the first federal politician to support the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance definition of anti-Semitism before it was fashionable. And So the accusations of One Nation being anti-Semitic or whatever is the complete opposite of the track record. But a couple of specific questions, Pauline, now that you've hopefully relaxed a bit.
Yeah.
We are in election mode. What are the priority messages that One Nation wants to get across between now and May 3?
Good question, David. Where do I start? There's so many issues there that concern many Australians. I think the high immigration that we've coming into the country, you've got cost of living, that's a huge big issue. You've got climate change and what they're trying to impose on us because of climate change. It's led to our cost of living. National security is another big issue for Australians. And family law. There's so many things, David, that concern me greatly. You know, businesses shutting down, industries manufacturing jobs for the future, the woke agenda, what's happening in our educational system. It's frightening. It's really frightening.
It is. A lot of people think that Australia has gone off the track. Let me ask you one specific thing about the woke agenda that for some reason neither of the major parties want to tackle, and that is the radical gender stuff, and particularly as it applies to children. And what's One Nation's view on how many genders there are? Should there be biological men in women's sport? Should gender fluidity be taught in schools? That whole set of issues, where do you stand?
David, the good old family values. There's only two genders, male and female. You're born a male or you're born a female. There's two biological. You cannot change from being a male to a female. You can take your hormone treatment, you can have your operations. It will never change you what you are. Yes, there are people that have, gender problems when they're born, and I acknowledge that. But you don't turn around and throw out the baby with the bathwater and saying, well, there's no definition to male or female. My daughter was telling me today that her son came home from school, year 7. The whole school's taught this. They have this teaching about, sex in the school. And he come home and said to his mother, he said, you've got a penis and you've got testicles. And she said, what are you talking about? No, I haven't. She said, no, we're all being taught. So she confronted the school, and they're teaching them that you don't have it because you're male, and you don't have this because you're female. You can have any of these parts. So they're actually twisting the whole concept of what's male and female, and it's confusing our kids. And parents are up in arms about it. And even the principal of the school told the educational department, don't send these people here teaching this to our kids. So until we stand up and fight this whole thing, we're going to have so many psychological problems that are going to happen further down the track. So it's up to us as Australians to say enough is enough. And that's where One Nation stands with this. The two major political parties don't want to say anything about it because they're trying to get the votes from these ones who are woke, who are, this gender fluidity and everything that is happening. But in the meantime, it's breaking down the family unit and who we are as humans, as people. So I'm very straight in the way I think about this, and I accept other people. What you want to do in your own home, that's up to you. But as far as I'm concerned, our society is male and female. I do not believe in men in women's sports, and I've come out strongly against that. You want to go and start up your transgender teams, play against each other, go for it. Get out of women's sports. And so I'm very strong in that, David.
You've articulated much more clarity than we're getting at from in any other party, and it seems to align pretty closely with the executive order that President Trump has signed, which is basically to stop that. I want to ask you about a specific immigration issue and also get Jennifer to comment on it. Australia leads the world in bringing people in from Gaza. We've issued over 3,000 visitor visas. We've learnt from Dan Tehan that now the bulk of those, somewhere between 70–75%, have already applied for asylum. So we've got the whole legal process now that is engaged. What's your view on that policy of bringing people in from an area that is controlled by a terrorist organisation, and it seems that there's been very little security screening done?
You're asking for my opinion or Jennifer's?
Yours, and then Jennifer.
I wouldn't have them here, David. Okay, 75% of those people actually vote for Hamas. They're actually used to that control by an ideology that is incompatible with our culture and way of life. That is what Islam is all about. And I've been speaking out against this for years. You do not bring a national threat into our country. And these people have now come to claim asylum in Australia. We've brought them out. No other country, these Arab countries round, wanted them. They haven't taken them. And they would have been more suited to go to these other countries closer to them. I don't believe we've done the right thing for future generations. I think it's going to cause more division in this nation. We don't know who they are. Some of these people got to come here with less than 24 hours of finding out who they really are, who they support. I'm in concern with it. As far as I'm concerned, and you're right, now they've claimed asylum, this legal battle now, the courts are turning around and saying, no, we can't deport them out of the country. We're going to have real problems to come. And if I had to say in this, I wouldn't have had any one of them come to this country. If you want to be humanitarian, you do it there in their own country or surrounding countries that will take them. You put them in refugee camps over there until the turmoil in their own country settles down.
Jennifer, do you have anything to add? Do you see any particular risks to the Jewish community with bringing thousands of people from Gaza?
Well, I mean, I clearly, would support the party position and Senator Hanson. And really the question is, why are the surrounding countries, Islamic countries, not willing to take any of these people? And I suppose we'd have to hear from them as to why, but it's very worrying that they don't. And we're just creating, problems for the future, because people don't leave their emotional attachments to their culture when they just cross the border to come into Australia. And so it's just another example of the government not putting Australians first. And that's what One Nation does. It actually says, well, is this in the best interest of Australians? And if the answer is yes, well, that's good. We're supportive. If it's no, then we're not. And this is a clear example where this is not in the long term, medium or short term in our interests.
100%. We've also called out this is a specific issue. A related one that we see on our streets, and we've seen it almost since the 7th of October 2023, is these demonstrations, large demonstrations, thousands of people, often overtly supporting proscribed terrorist organisations, carrying flags of Hamas or Hezbollah, carrying the portrait of terrorists when Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah, was executed by Israel. The next day, there were people on the streets with his portraits. Can I get a comment on how this has happened and how we should react to those that support proscribed terrorist organisations on Australian streets?
David, my great concern about it is we're heading down the same path as where the UK has gone. Now, many parts of the UK, the police or anyone else can't go there without permission. We're talking about they're controlled by Muslims, Islam. They're taking over control of councils. There's over 1,000 Sharia law courts. They control a lot of the vote in the country. We're headed down the same path. And so a lot of the politicians here in the country are afraid to speak out against Islam or the impact it may have on our country. And a lot of these seats that have strong Muslim numbers, they will have an impact on the votes and these politicians getting re-elected. So these politicians are not looking at the future, they're looking at their re-election, and they don't want to say anything. We've seen the demise of a lot of people who speak out against Islam, about their ideology, what's happened throughout the world. And that's why a lot of countries now are starting to wake up that they've done the wrong thing by allowing these numbers into their countries, and they've lost control of their country, and it's not for the better. I've spoken out about this. I did speak about it in my 2016 speech to Parliament. I've been speaking out for time. I think, Phil, I've been the only one that has spoken about it, that I can see the dangers that we're going to face as a nation further down the track. And what I want is, there are people in the country who are of a Muslim background. So if you're born in that country, you are a Muslim, but it doesn't mean say whether you are a practicing Muslim. You know, people say they're bad apples, but sometimes you never know if that apple is bad till you cut it open and you see what's on the inside. And this is a big risk that we take. But I won't stop speaking out again about this, because we have to have the debate, David. People, the Jewish community or any Australian, have the right to be able to go any place in this country and feel safe and feel they are protected as Australians. When it gets to the stage that you're frightened to go in any area because you're going to have one sector of our community that are going to make threats, and this has happened on our streets, yet I don't see the politicians or any of our police or anyone else holding them to account. And that's the big mistake we're making. These people must be held to account for their words of, I think it's, what can I say? You know, their venom that they have against one section of our society or anyone else that may stand against them or what their beliefs are. So I'm very strong in this. We have to stand up to this venom.
Yeah, it might only be a minority, but it's a significant minority, and they can do a lot of damage, as we've seen in other countries. And it is a worry. I've seen a question come through the chat that was also on my list, because the Labor government has given, it seems, a great deal of preference to bringing people from Gaza and some other places, but have almost put up a blockade against the white South African farmers. And I know that's been discussed politically a couple of times. What's your view on the differential? And as far as we can tell, the South African farmers are highly productive people. We've got tons of space. They're being persecuted just as much as other groups around the world are being persecuted, yet they can't come to Australia.
Yeah. David, I have spoken out about this in the past, that why aren't we bringing in the Boers or the Afrikaners into the country? These are people who have been persecuted in Africa, and they've actually lost their homes, their properties. Some that I hear are living in refugee camps. They can't get employment because they're white. They're in fear for their lives, the carjacking, the rapes and problems that happen over there. Yet we're not listening to that. These people would be, assimilate into our country very easily, but we're bringing in the wrong people. And I will say it, we are, in many instances, bringing in the wrong people into this country, and we should be looking at bringing in more South Africans. And I've been hearing this since 1996, when I was approached by South Africans then. My sister-in-law is South African, who migrated here in the 90s. So she's explained to me all the problems they're having over there. I'm hearing it from South Africans now. Reach out to me that just want to have someone listen to their plight and the problems they're going through. They can't understand why they can't get to stay in Australia.
Okay, I can see we've got a whole stack of questions, and so Tennille or Robert, would you like to invite a few questions?
Sure, Tennille will take some questions. I might just ask one really quickly before we go to questions. Thank you for joining us, Pauline. Always good to see you, and Jennifer as well. Just a question. It's not a big election issue now, but it has come up in the past. And I think the coalition has been quite good on Israel, quite supportive of Israel, especially compared to Labour and obviously other parties to the left. But one thing they really messed up was recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and moving the embassy there. The Morrison government half did it, then didn't do it. They didn't have the courage of Trump. And I know One Nation, I think yourself and Senator Malcolm Roberts has in the past said that you would support recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital if it came up. So I just wanted to see whether that is the case and if you had any thoughts on that.
It is the case, haven't changed. You know, it's not my country. I've never been there yet. I do intend to go there. I've had a wonderful invitation to go there, and I will. So I have to listen to the people themselves. You have to tell me, you know, is that what you want? Do you recognise Jerusalem as your capital? So, you know, and that's what I've heard you do. So, you know, that's what I support, is what the people have to say. It's not my thoughts. It shouldn't be up to the government's thoughts. It's what the people want.
Well, I think in that case, it puts you and One Nation as more pro-Israel, more supportive of Israel than the coalition, especially on that issue. So that's very interesting.
Well, I've always been different to the coalition in many ways, and actually they follow my lead on many policies. So hopefully they might follow my lead on this one if I give them some backbone to stand up for Israel and what the people want.
Thank you. Tennille's going to take some questions. I think she's just dropped out.
She's coming in, so you take the first couple.
I'm here, and I'd like to remind everyone to just pop your hand up if you have a question. I see we have a lot of hands up. I don't know if we'll get round to everyone, so please short and sharp with the questions. Hugh Kitson, unmute, please.
Hello, Pauline. I'm a 10-pound pom who came here in 1970. And in 1977, I did a visit to England. And my late father and I shared a railway carriage with the late Enoch Powell. And an amazing politician, probably the best, clearest thinking politician since the Churchill era. Now, he was very vilified by the British press. He was accused of being a racist and everything else. And your thinking is quite similar to his in many ways. How have you coped with the vilification, the insults, and everything else that he did?
I know Enoch Powell. I actually watched a video clip of his and the interview that he did to do concerning immigration, and he was vilified. And actually, people from England, they said, you're the Enoch Powell of Australia. And they said that in 1996, 97, when I hit the political scene here. You know, my answer to that is that I'm in this not as a career politician, but as a grassroots Australian that loves my country and wants what's best for the people. Yes, I've had my knocks and I've had many over the years, but the whole fact is that I know where my heart is. I know what I stand for. And I'm not going to let these people who don't really know me make their barbs and have their go at me. Do you think I take any notice of them? I don't. I only take notice of the people that are my close friends, my loved ones, people who care about me. Why would I worry about what these other people say? You know, I'll stand my own, you know, on my own 2 feet. I'll say what I think. I try to be honest with the people, and the people will judge me, not these other people who want to put me down and pull me down all the time.
Thank you. Michael Bird.
Yeah, hi, Pauline.
Hi, Michael.
As a Jewish Australian, I'd like to commend you on your strong stance on immigration and refugees, and I only hope you please stay the course. I wanted to ask you a few questions about Israel. Robert's already asked one of them about the embassy, but would you, if it was up to you, would you stop funding UNRWA?
Of course. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And also the Pay for Slaying Jews program that Labor and the Greens, or particularly Labor, are funding the Palestinians, would you stop sending those tens of $millions to Gaza from Australia?
Of course, no problem with that. Both of them. Direct answer.
Thank you.
We'll go to Harvey. Please unmute.
Hi, Pauline. My name's Harvey Milder. Lovely to hear what you have both had to say. Sometimes I find myself concerned about the future of this country. We seem to be going in the wrong direction in so many ways, and the direction has been going the wrong way for only probably 20 years, but really accelerated since the start of this decade for obvious reasons. And I find myself thinking that maybe I don't have much of a future here. How bad do you think things are going to get, and where do you think we're going to go from where we are right now?
If we don't turn around, my opinion is, if we actually get another Labor Greens government for the next 3 years, it's going to be so bad, I don't believe we're going to be able to undo the damage that they will do. I've always spoken up about where I saw, and I was against multiculturalism. I always said that people should see themselves as Australians under one law, and but that's my concern. The cost of living, what's happened is there's now a division. We used to have the low social economic, then we had the middle Australian, then we had, those Australians who were quite well-to-do, wealthy. We've lost the middle Australian. So the people are getting poorer. Their way of living is a lot less now than what it used to be. We didn't have all the assets when I was growing up. We didn't have, I shared a bedroom with two of my sisters, and I'm one of 7 children. But we shared things. We didn't have the 2 cars. We didn't have the 3 TVs. We didn't have the commuters, everything like that, but we had great family values. That's all been lost now in so many ways. We're poorer for this in the way the country is now. And I feel Australians, the younger generations, don't know what this country used to be like. And so they're just accepting of the way it is. I feel for future generations who will be thrown on the scrap heap if they haven't got those technologies available to them. We've lost jobs in industries, manufacturing, having a diversity of work for people. I feel that the older generation will be forgotten. We won't have the services for them in the nursing homes to look after them. Healthcare is on the decline. Our hospitals can't cope with it. So many things that we've got problems with. And I think they're going to have a flood of people from other nations coming into Australia that will not hold the Australian values, and we're going to have division in this nation.
Thank you. Josh, please unmute.
Thanks, Tennille. Hi, Pauline. Josh Massara here from the Epoch Times. Just want to ask you, Pauline, just given the amount of frustration Australians now have with both major parties, what are some key electorates you think One Nation can make inroads in for the federal election? And what were your thoughts on Labor's response to the outback Queensland floods?
Right. Josh, what's the only seat I think that we've got a chance of lowering our seat of winning is the Hunter Valley. We've got Stuart Bond that's standing there. So it'll come down between the National Party and One Nation to win that seat for a lower house seat. Because the Labor Party preference us last, and so that's extremely hard for us to actually win seats. I think our chance is to win Senate seats across the whole country, and I think we've got that opportunity to win Senate seats in every state in this election. The last election, we pulled the 7th spot. There's only 6 seats available. We pulled the 7th spot. The last election, the Libs did not give us preferences in the states. That was the problem. The Libs hated me more than what they did the Greens or Labor, who was, their policies. But now I think they've started to wake up that they have to work with One Nation, because I'm a Conservative at heart and I support Liberal Party policies before I do the Labor or Greens. So if we can get the balanced power on the Senate, whoever is in government, if we have that power in the Senate, we can then reject or amend legislation or pass it based on what I think is right for the country. We will work for the people. We're not there to be destructive. We want this country to move forward. So hopefully, and I will pull the Liberals up. If they're not going to come up with policies that is beneficial to future generations, I will not support anything that they throw up. And I've proven my point for 6 years that we had the balanced power under Turnbull and Morrison.
Thank you, Pauline. Terry, please unmute.
Hi, Pauline. Before we started this meeting, I was briefly looking at the debate between the two, the Treasurer and the opposition Treasurer.
Yeah.
But Pauline, I only have eyes for you.
Oh, that's lovely.
Lovely
comment.
One of the things that came up, both of them were asked, what would you cut in order to cut government expenditure, because we're probably on the edge of a recession? Where would you find the money to do away with from government spending? As your colleague just said earlier, make government a lot smaller.
That's a start to where we need to do that, is make government a lot smaller with the number of politicians. Okay, we can reduce numbers of politicians as well. We don't need as many as we have. And the bureaucrats and the number of public servants that we have. But we've announced a policy to reduce government spending by 90 billion a year. And how this can happen? We're spending 30 billion a year in climate change, a department that we don't need. We'd get out of the Paris Agreement. We would actually then, open up and get out of this, all these transmission lines, the $1.5 trillion it's going to cost us for this. And it's not helping our country. We see industries and manufacturing closing down, going overseas. They can't afford the electricity. We've got people living in the dark. Age pensioners can't pay the bills. We've got families being disconnected from the grid. It's just madness the way they're driving that. Another area is that the TGA, Therapeutic Goods Administration, should be actually rolled into the health department. That's funded by pharmaceutical by 2/3. And I've got a big problem with these big pharma companies that are pushing their own agenda. The educational department, any of these departments that are actually not double dipping, but they're, we've got it in the states. States are responsible for education. We don't need to duplicate it federally, and paying these departments where we should be looking after and getting more teachers of quality into our classrooms. The other one is the NDIS. At the moment, it's about 44 billion a year. It is expected to raise to 90 to 100 billion by 2032. It is unsustainable. We've got people getting paid for services that are out of the question to the normal sector of what they're charged. And a lot of people on NDIS that shouldn't be on it. So it's a scam that's going on. There's many areas that can be addressed with it and cut back the wasteful spending. I'd do an audit into the Aboriginal industry. You're looking at the government NIAA, that's attached to the Prime Minister's cabinet. That costs $4.5 billion a year. You've got $12.5 billion that's given into the Aboriginals itself. Then another $11 billion is given out from government departments in grants to just Aboriginals alone. The whole thing is a scam. You need a complete audit. You've got over 3,000 Aboriginal corporations that are out there living off the taxpayer. It's never ending. Never ending. Terrible.
Aidan, please unmute.
Hi, thanks, Tennille. Thanks, Pauline, Jennifer, and David. My question was actually about universities, because Jewish students and as a whole conservative students have been felt redundant or ostracized. We have the socialists all over campus, and the coalition likes to throw out words about we're going to tackle the woke agenda. What actually will be done to tackle this woke agenda that universities are putting forward? Will that be something along the lines of Trump in cutting funding to universities? Yeah, practically, essentially what will be done.
You're exactly right. I think the only way to deal with it is to cut the funding to universities. Universities are not-for-profit organisation. They actually don't pay taxes in this country. They make billions of dollars out of the foreign students, plus also the government's propping them up. We've got the woke agenda that's been going on there, and people that they employ and pushing their own ideology and agenda on the students. And the last one is even the Aboriginal issue, where the lecturer was saying that if you don't do welcome to country and you don't do the walk, you won't get the pass. That is not up to teachers. That is not part of our getting kids getting their university degrees, and that should be questioned. It should be stopped. And the only way you'll get them to listen to you is you cut their funding, you set the rules. If you want the money, taxpayers' money, sorry, this is the guidelines, these are the rules. No student from any background, whether you are a Muslim, whether you're a Jewish, or whether you're Australian or Chinese, I don't care. If they're an Australian and they're going to the universities, everyone should be treated the same, equally and fairly, without biased, or they should be able to go there without fear as well. And it's up to our politicians to set the guidelines and to make sure that is the case. Every student has the right to be able to move around on campus without fear or favour. And I mean both ways, of being attacked, or whether how they deal with their classes, or how they are supposed to do their thesis, or how they do their exams. They should not be bullied. And I see too much of this going on in our universities.
We should bring Jennifer in on
Yeah,
something.
sorry.
And Jennifer mentioned briefly that she's got a background with taxation. So, Jennifer, are there any tax issues, tax policies that you've been looking at, that One Nation has been looking at, that are worth mentioning?
So we've put out as a party a policy of income splitting or joint filing of tax returns for families, because we'd like to see more money in the hands of families. Clearly, that would be a hit to the revenue, but then, as the Senator was saying, there's a lot to be saved by not duplicating, say, the Health Department or the Education Department federally. I mean, they don't have any, the Health Department doesn't have any patients or any hospitals, and the Education Department doesn't have any students. I don't think we need to duplicate that. And there's a lot of savings there. And of course, the Climate and Energy Department, which is focused on legislating climate change. I mean, they can't fix any other problem in society, but they think that they can control, the movement of the sun and everything else. So we think there's a lot of savings there that will offset, a reduced tax burden. We also want to allow people who are self-funded retirees, a higher threshold before they pay tax, $35,000. And we want our pensioners to be able to keep their pension and work as much as they like. So we'd like to see some serious adjustment to the tax system, because we need people to work. When people talk about, and the government does this and the government does that, what they're really saying is that fellow Australians who are working are providing those funds, and we need people to be as self-sufficient as they can. I worry that, I mean, in South Australia, I can tell you that we've got intergenerational welfare, and it's a very bad thing, extremely bad. Yes, so there's a lot the tax system can do to create economic freedom for people. And the party's well known for its support for freedom of speech. The Senator in particular personally has done an enormous amount for Australians. She's really created the opportunity to speak out in a way that really nobody else in this country has. But we also want to give people economic freedom, and we could, if we had the balance of power, and that would simply take people voting, one at every opportunity for One Nation, and then put their second option next. If we're not successful, then it will, the vote will flow to them. So I think that probably broadly covers it.
I should make the comment. I've known Jennifer also for, I don't know how long, 10 years, Jennifer, maybe a little bit more. And she is one of the most intelligent and meticulous people that I've ever come across who work in Parliament House. Really, when she puts forward a policy, it's always well researched. The data is there, a person of considerable intelligence and substance. That's what I'd say about Jennifer.
You're so right, David. I have to say that too. Jennifer's worked in my office for 8.5 years, and I back up everything that you say there. With Jennifer's ability, her competence, her research, it is meticulous, and that's why I've so proud to have her working for me, and so proud that she's actually a candidate for myself in this election. What I've got to also say about that, we've done a lot for the self-funded retirees as well. Now, they've actually gone without, then they can't get the age pension. So what we're doing is we're extending their tax threshold from $18,500, or approximately that, to $35,000 before they actually have to pay tax on it. So I think self-funded retirees need to get rewarded for their efforts, and they're not a drain on the taxpayer. So let's give them something back in return. I think I'm the only party looking after self-funded retirees. So I'm very strong on this.
Thank you. We'll go to our final question from our audience tonight. Rachel.
Oh, hi. Thanks for letting me in, and thank you both for joining us tonight. I've got a question for you, Pauline, and I don't, it might sound naive, but much as I've admired you ever since you started, probably, I don't know, 100 years ago, I just admire your guts and gumption in the face of so much BS, quite frankly. And however, having said that, I've never actually voted for you, and it's always been because I've always worked from the basis that every single vote counts, and therefore I must give my vote to LNP every single time to make sure they don't lose by one vote, which might have been mine. So I guess my question to you is, if I was to vote for you, and I really, really do want to, where do your preferences go if you don't get, and I hate to be blunt, but if you don't get in, then who's going to get that vote?
It's where you put your preferences yourself on your ballot paper. Do you know that how you mark it, that's where your preferences go? The how to vote cards put out by candidates or political parties is only a recommendation. How you mark the ballot paper is where the preferences go. So if you want to vote for One Nation number 1, and that if we don't get up and win that seat, your vote will flow to who you mark number 2. If they don't get up, then it will flow to your number 3. You're in control of your preferences. And this is what the major political parties have been saying. This is the attitude of a lot of Australians. Oh, we have to vote for one of the majors. You don't. And when you don't give them your number 1 vote, it sends a clear message to them saying, you better start listening to the Australian people, because you're not going to keep winning the seats. And Australians haven't woken up. In the last election, over 30% of Australians voted independents or minor parties. Why do you think the Libs and Nats are picking up a lot of my policies? Where did you think the fuel excise of cutting it by 25 cents a litre came from? It's my policy I announced in February. Stopping foreign investment, my policy. I've been on about that for years. I was the first one to come out opposing the Voice, and that's when the Nats and Libs picked it up. So I actually set the pace for them, and so they pick up the policy. Superannuation, using it for your home loan, my policy. So a lot of this has happened because I put pressure on them. So when you give your vote to One Nation, it puts a shockwave through the major political parties that they have to start listening to the Australian people. So put One Nation 1, then put Libs 2. We don't get up, your vote will flow to them.
Thank you. For our final question for the evening, we always like to put it onto our guests to ask our audience, what can we do to further support you? How can we follow you? Both Senator Pauline, Jennifer, what would you like to see from us? How do we follow your journey? How do we support you? What more can we do?
Well, that's a really good question. And it's about informing the Australian people about what we have to offer you. And it's about our policies. Do you agree with our policies, cutting back on the spending, protecting the Australian people? And if we can get the message out, nothing to. You've got a great person, Jennifer, for South Australia, as I have got fantastic senators right across the whole country, and that lower house vote as well. If you can help us with even on the day, on the voting day, if you can man a polling booth, if you can actually put up signs in the yard, if you can get the message out, or letterbox dropping, just those little things to get the message out, because we don't have the big funds that come in from the major political parties do. We run it on a shoestring budget to try and get our message out. But if you can help us get the message out, then people will know that One Nation is out there fighting for you, because it's a team effort. If we get on the floor of Parliament, we can then keep fighting for your message, our way of life, and for future generations, but it's a team effort. So we need the people to get behind us and support us.
Thank you, Senator Pauline. We'll go back to Dr. David Adler now.
Thank you.
I want to thank Senator Pauline Hanson, despite the glitch, joining us. And just before I do the complete sign-off, Jennifer, is there a specific way in which people can support you and your campaign?
So, as I've mentioned before, very few Jewish people in South Australia, but anyone can write to me at email me at jennifer.game@onenation.org.au, and yes, if they'd like to donate some money, or if they'd like to share my social media, if they think that it might go to people in South Australia, that would be lovely. I'd just like to say there's a wonderful candidate in McNamara in Victoria, whose name is Sean Rubin, who's Jewish and deserving of support if you happen to be in McNamara.
Okay, thank you. It's amazing. Probably on a per capita basis, One Nation has a disproportionately high number of Jewish candidates, I think. Anyway, look, thank you both so much for joining us. Very enlightening, and we will make we do record the events, and the video will be circulated in our email list. Best wishes, and I'm sure there's a One Nation website where anyone can get more information if they're interested in volunteering on election day, or in the pre-poll, or making a donation. It's all accessible.
That's lovely. Thank you, Dave. Very appreciate that. So it's onenation.org.au. And just to guess what? I don't know if you know, I've got my daughter standing for the Senate in Tasmania. So I've got the younger generation coming through. She's a bit of a firebrand, like me, probably a little bit, she's more diplomatic than me, but she'll make a fantastic senator. So if you're in Tasmania, and if you can get behind my daughter, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you, David.
Thank you.